Welcome to the Web Soil Survey online guidance soil map portion of the training. In this, we're going to look at the soil map tab. So in the last section on here, we figured out how to do an area of interest. And so as you see, we do have a large area of interest that I have in this blue checked area of the box. What we're going to look at now is the soil maps. You're going to go up to these tabs at the top and you're going to select soil map. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate a soil map of the area that you selected. So in here I have selected a really large soil map area for us to look at. And I'm actually going to zoom in a little closer to the area that we have. I kind of suggest to do a bigger area than your field or what you're looking at, because when we're looking at the soil map units, they were mapped on a very large scale. And so when we're looking at the soil map units and these lines can be very, very wide, wider than they are drawn on Web Soil Survey. So just because you have one soil map unit on one side and a different one over here, this line can be very broad, much broader than what it is. So it's really important to be able to look at the soils that are surrounding the area that you're looking at. So for this, we're going to be kind of looking at this area around this pond sites around through here. And so in order for us to get a better idea about the soil map, one thing that we're really going to look at during this section is verification. And so the most important thing about your soil map is verifying that the units that you're going to pull later on from Soil Data Explorer are appropriately used for your practice, because it's very possible that you could go out to the site and look at one of our soil map units like this one here, and it actually end up being this soil map unit over here, which can change the numbers that you're putting in for different practices. So it's really important to verify. So when we're looking at our soil map, you're going to notice that once you go to your soil map tab, it's going to generate the map unit legend. And our map unit legend, you're going to have your map unit symbol, which are going to be these letters over here. These correlate to a map unit name, which are going to be these blue that we can put over and look at it. And then we're also going to have acres in your area of interest that these make up, and the percent of the area of interest that each of these soil map units make up. So it's really important to look at each of your map units. So usually when you're going to look at first is of course going to be where the area is. So for this, we're looking at CND2. So we're going to look over here for CND2, which is a Clifton Clay Loam 15 to 30% slopes. So if I click on that, it's going to give me more information about the soil map unit. So I'm just going to drag this to the side. So as we look here, it's going to give us a lot of different information. And so all this information that it gives you, I want when you go out to look at the site to make sure that these things are adding up. If you are out there and, for example, this says this is a 15 to 30% slope. So if I went out to the field and I'm looking at the CND2 section and I went out there and this is very, very flat, then that's going to be a red flag. And that's going to be an indication that maybe this isn't mapped correctly, or maybe it's one of the adjacent map units. In that case, I would always look at the adjacent map units to see if one of those correlates. Or, I mean, if you're really starting to feel uncertain, or if you have any doubt, you can always call one of your soil scientists or regional soil scientists and have them come out and just kind of verify or check what map unit you should be using for this practice. So in this case, we're looking at the Clifton Clay Loam. It's 15 to 30% slopes and it's eroded. So the things that we're going to look at here, first thing you want to look at is your map unit composition. So this is really important, because when we're looking at map unit compositions, it's going to tell you the percent of that map unit that is actually that map unit. So when they mapped the soil series, a lot of these different series would have inclusions in them of other things. So just because we've got this big blob shaped polygon that says this is all this soil unit, that doesn't mean that a small section here or a small section here is actually something else. And so that's possible. And in this case, they're estimating that there's about 20% of other things that are going to be found within this soil map unit. So again, that's where that field verification is going to be very important. So when I talk about field verification, again, we can talk about slopes. We can also going to really look at that typical profile. And so you see here is we have this typical profile. And so this is going to tell me what I should be seeing if I go in the field. So if I go in the field, I'm going to expect to have a clay loam surface soil. And then underneath that, I'm going to have a V horizon of clay. They could be 8 to 55 inches. These could vary a little bit. These are very typical, but in general, you should be seeing this. So if I had an A horizon that was 6 inches of clay loam, or even maybe 3 inches of clay loam, as long as I'm seeing that it generally looks the same as this, even though there may be a little bit of difference in the depths, then I'm feeling pretty good that this is the correct map unit. So you want to verify that. Other things you want to look at for verification are going to be your drainage class. So in this case, we have well-drained soil. So if we're starting to see things that indicate that the water table is high, if we're starting to see any type of, that gray feature that we're looking for in the case of wet soils, you're really going to want to check to make sure that's not happening, because that's going to be an indication this is not mapped correctly. Other things you're going to look at is depth to restrictive layers is something that's really important. So this is more than 80 inches. So that's important, especially if you're in places that have lots of bedrock, to make sure that we're not hitting those restrictive features, and to verify that that is clear. So one way to it's really important is if we go out to a site and you're seeing bedrock, for example, everywhere, and it's mapped as not having a depth to restrictive feature at all, something like more than 80 inches, then that's another key that we're probably not looking at the right map unit. Other things you'll notice about your map unit legend is that you'll see some things that are fully mapped out as an entire series by themselves, and some things are complexes. And so when we click on these complexes, that means that you could have either one of these soil could be part of the composition. So in this example, you're seeing a Chandler Micaville complex 30 to 50% stoning. And so when we look at that map unit composition again, you're going to see Chandler Stony and similar source make it 50%, whereas Micaville Stony and similar source are 30%. So these complexes are usually around half and half, one series or the other. And so when you're looking at your typical profile, you want to try to see if it matches either one of these profiles. And so in this case, we have two different profiles that we could look at. And as long as we're seeing that, then the numbers that Soil Survey is giving you are going to be accurate when we look at later on the Soil Data Explorer. And in our next section, we are going to go over the Soil Data Explorer and a little bit of the numbers that you're going to need for different properties, different practices, things that are going to be very key for that.